Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should be aware that this presentation may contain images, voices, or names of deceased persons in photographs, film, recordings, audio, or printed.
Womaninji, welcome to Brabalong country of the Gunai Kurnai Nation. Brabalong country takes in the Tambo, Nicholson and Mitchell rivers and takes us west to Providence Ponds. When visitors came to our country, they were welcomed with water and they were welcomed with gum leaves. The water because they travelled, and the gum leaves because they sat on the country, and because it was somebody else's country, they could only sit on the gum leaves. To honour this gesture, I offer you water and gum leaves. To give you an overview of Aboriginal people of Victoria, this map from the Victorian Aboriginal Corporation for Languages represents all the Aboriginal groups and their boundaries across Victoria. There are 38 different language groups across the state. Each language group had several dialects, and the stories, the cultural practices, and the cultural knowledge is in the language of the land. The Gunai Kurnai 5 clan groups had 5 different language dialects. Most of the language recorded came from 3 dialects collected by surveyors, the missionaries, and others over time. This was also when much of the local language ceased to be spoken. The local language is in a process of reclamation and revival from archival and oral records and is being revived by the community. This map of Gippsland shows the 5 clans of the Gunai Kurnai. The Kuratungalung occupied the land east of Lakes Entrance and a strip east of the Snowy River. The Brabalong includes the Tambo, Nicholson and Mitchell rivers and their tributaries west to Providence Ponds. The Bryakalung occupied the land west of Providence Ponds and takes in the Avon, McAllister, Thompson and Latrobe rivers to the junction of the 2 lakes. The Bratalung occupied the land between the Latrobe River and Cape Liptrap from the southern watershed, taking in the sea and Yirak, the traditional name for the prom. The Tatungalung occupied the land and the water between Gippsland Lakes and the sea, taking in the islands. The Gunai Kurnai moved around the land following the seasonal cycles with food and camped along the coast, along the rivers and in the high country. The Gunai Kurnai lived from seafood, bush food, fish, swan eggs, oysters and mussels. This evidence of occupation is found in the shell-midden sites found along the coastal areas and the rivers. The tools and implements were made from material like bark to make canoes and string to make fish nets. String was also made from plant fibre to make bags and fish nets. The Gunai Kurnai wore possum skin cloaks to keep warm in the cold weather, and each family member had their own. Ceremonies in special places were recorded and photographed. Many sites and places in Gippsland have stories from the Gunai Kurnai about social behaviours and about looking after the land and sharing stories. These can be learnt from following the Butterluck Trail. This slide includes photos and images of people and places from archival sources. The images tell a story about the Gunai Kurnai life on the Lake Tyers and Rumiak mission and living on the fringes off the mission. This is a short story of historical impacts on the lives of Aboriginal people of Gippsland. This map shows the two mission stations in Gippsland, Lake Tyers Mission and Rumiak Mission. Both were established in 1861. In 1830s, rapid colonial expansion by European settlers took over large tracts of land, depriving the Gunai Kurnai of their land they relied on to live. This led to wars and massacres across Gippsland, where the Gunai Kurnai were no match for the guns of the Europeans. These massacres are well documented. The significant decline of the Gunai Kurnai population and public pressure moved the government to establish the Central Board for the Protection of Aboriginal People in 1860. It was intended that the churches would civilise and Christianise the Aboriginal people and to educate the children in Western ways. Under the Victorian Aboriginal Protection Act, this gave the Victorian Government the power to remove children from families, to institutionalise them and put them into domestic and farm service. In 1886, under the Aboriginal Protection Act, known as the Half-Caste Act, Aboriginal people from 13 to 34 years old, who were not considered full-blooded Aboriginal people, were removed and forced to live outside. Whilst the missions provided a safe place to live, the loss and destruction of culture and language is felt in the lives of Gunai Kurnai people today. The Aboriginal population in Gippsland is comprised of both traditional owners and descendants of Aboriginal people from across Victoria. Aboriginal people lived on the fringes of society around Gippsland, along the Snowy River and Mitchell River, in the bush in bark huts, on the properties of farmers where they did farming, fencing and seasonal work. Many moved to work and live at timber mills across Gippsland. The first Aboriginal family moved into Bensdale in 1963 into O'Brien Street. On the 22nd of October 2010, after a 13-year court battle, the Gunai Kurnai were formally recognised as the traditional owners of the land they had occupied for over 18,000 years. Mullet, on behalf of Gunai Kurnai, were granted native title through the Federal Court and a settlement agreement with the State of Victoria over 1.33 million hectares of land across Gippsland. These photos share the achievement of the Elders and community celebration and court hearing at the Knob Reserve. In the agreement with the State of Victoria, it includes joint management agreements with Parks Vic and DELP, over 10 parks and reserves across Gippsland. This relationship gives the Gunai Kurnai decision-making over land and water in Gippsland. Native title acknowledges the ongoing, continued connection to land, to sites, to stories, and the lands of the Gunai Kurnai as traditional owners.
My name's Grattan Mullet Senior. I'm the Cultural Hub Manager here at Glawak. It stands for the Gunai Kurnai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation, which is a registered native title body who holds the native title rights on behalf of our native title holders. We were one of the first traditional owner groups in Victoria to be recognised under the Traditional Owner Settlement Act, which came into effect in 2010. Our native title determination, which was held at the Knob Reserve, it was represented by a lot of our community people, a whole range of different government sort of department agencies, and just people just generally from the community. Smoking ceremony was sort of held, as well as a dance performance to welcome people to the land. You could just feel, the pride amongst, our people. You could just feel the real strong energy there at the time. To us, it felt like, that our ancestors were part of that day as well. So they really sort of, felt that something really good's going to happen, in the future for Gunai Kurnai people. That sort of helped sort of establish, our corporation to start sort of implementing a lot of, the, I guess, aspirations that came as part of our native title claim. Primarily our role is land management, cultural heritage, and also looking after the interests around native title matters. We do have a number of crews that work out on country. We have our own joint management rangers to work on country in partnership with Parks Victoria and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, DELP. The other teams are our Natural Resource Management Enterprise team. That's a crew that basically works out on country also, delivering a whole range of different services to a lot of the environmental agencies. The other team we have also is the Cultural Heritage and Registered Aboriginal Party team. And their role is to basically manage and preserve a lot of our cultural heritage. We have a whole of country plan which sort of sets out the main sort of goals and objectives which is a part of our vision. One of those is being respected as the traditional sort of owners and custodians of our country, of our land, to have the rights to use and manage those sort of natural resources that's always been a part of our customs and our law, to support a lot of those sort of smaller enterprises and businesses that communities might have ideas around. Strong focus on learning and sort of training and offering sort of more opportunities for our whole sort of community membership. Practicing and looking at protecting sort of our cultural ways and our practices. With our status as being sort of that land management type of organisation is looking after country and healing country, and that all sort of falls into a healthy land and a healthy mob. So it's really sort of encompassing a lot of those, goals and objectives around our cultural values as the sort of traditional owners, custodians of Gippsland. So that's what this is all about. It's I guess the recognition that that you are the true people from that country. You speak for that country, and now that's given us a more of a legal sort of recognition and status as traditional owners of Gippsland. Which is very important not only for us today but also for the importance of our future generations coming through.
We are Gunai Kurnai, the first people of our country. We have survived for tens of thousands of years, often against great adversity. We have looked after our country and passed on our stories and traditions through countless generations. We continue to survive and thrive, maintaining connection to our country and to our ancestors. The future we see is one where Gunai Kurnai stands proud and strong, where our people have strong connections to their culture and country, where our businesses and relationships are based on solid foundations, and where we are self-sufficient and highly respected. In our future, our mob is united, the 5 clans of Gunai Kurnai working together to support each other.
Wumaniji Netul Maktar Rob. I'm a Gunai Kurnai person from this area. My role at the keeping place, the Kutungan keeping place, is to teach young children of all ages, teach adults as well, the tourists that come through this area, the true history of Australia basically, and the true history of Gippsland, making sure people are aware of the atrocities what happened, but also what needs to happen as well into the future. When you come into the keeping place here, you'll be gobsmacked what's actually in here. It's very small but very powerful what's delivered. There are many examples of the atrocities, or I'll say that, I'll be quite blunt, massacres. Recorded and unrecorded massacres throughout Gippsland, and also the history of Lake Tyers as well, why that was there, how people were forcibly removed from other country onto Lake Tyers. You come in here and you'll see where and why Aboriginal people are still traumatised. And when I say that, what happened in my grandfather's lifetime and my great-grandmother's lifetime, and also some of our elders recall what happened at Lake Tyers, and also recall what happened in Gippsland. I've had an 18-year-old girl speak to me in front of a class, and she was traumatised, very hurt about not getting taught language because of the trauma that was happened onto them. A lot of people think that Aboriginal people live in Maiamai still. I've had many people ask, where do Aboriginal people live? Aboriginals, or the Gunai Kurnai, live within the community. And Lake Tyers is one of them communities, but also throughout the other towns as well. Personally, I believe it's to reconcile between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. It starts from acknowledgement. Acknowledge the true past, not ignore it. And just constantly letting our kids see that it's acceptable to acknowledge another culture as well, and acknowledge Aboriginal people being in this country for thousands of years. It's basically acknowledgement. A lot of people don't know about Aboriginal culture, why they're still hurt, generational trauma. And a lot of people in this town don't realise what's in what GJAC do, and also what's delivered from this keeping place as well. So getting aware of what's happening and be inclusive with each other,
The Gunai Kurnai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation and the Gippsland Environment Agency signatories commit to work together towards shared objectives and mutual opportunities that meet our respective goals. Together, we have agreed on 4 common objectives that contribute to the goals of all parties. Objective 1. Respecting Gunai Kurnai as traditional owners and fostering mutual respect. Objective 2. Supporting economic development opportunities. Objective 3. Supporting joint management arrangements within the 10 parks and reserves. Objective 4. Support a workforce strategy for Aboriginal people in Gippsland. The agencies and organisations who have signed the GLAWAC agreement include the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning Gippsland, Parks Victoria, East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority, West Gippsland Catchment Management Authority, Environment Protection Authority, Southern Rural Water, Gippsland Water, East Gippsland Water, South Gippsland Water, Agriculture Victoria, Trust for Nature, North East Catchment Management Authority, and the Gunai Kurnai Traditional Owner Land Management Board. We understand that to achieve the shared objectives, we will walk together to share strengths, build opportunity, and develop a close working relationship that benefits all partners.